Okay, it's time to get started. Come on. All right, welcome to Theology Unplugged. I'm Michael Patton, and this is Theology Unplugged Live. You're probably getting familiar with this because this is how we're doing most of Theology Unplugged. Very rarely do we have one that at least doesn't start out live. So it's really good to have you guys. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late. We're trying to start at 12 o'clock Central, so 12 p.m. Central for anybody who wants to join us live. And just look for us every day, 12 p.m. Central at lunchtime. Right whenever you're driving down the road, going to pick up your lunch, come turn us on, and we'll be playing. So I'm a little bit disembobbled right now because my wife just called and said her car was broken down, and so she's in a neighborhood, and I was trying to figure out whether or not to cancel or what we were going to do, and we'll just wait here, and or we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to keep my phone close to me because I may have to go and help her. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that big of a problem. It's just overheating, and she just needs to wait for a little bit and put some water in it. Hopefully that's it. But there's something the matter with the radiator. So there's more to it, obviously. But anyway, we're glad to have you. As you maybe saw before you came in at the entryway and on the where was it, the title, wherever the title's at, we're doing the same thing we did last time. Now, the difference is this time I'm using my regular microphone. Somehow a different microphone was hooked up to it and it was pulling it in. It was horrible sound. So this one will be a lot better. But this is what we're going to be doing, is going over this chart here. How is Christianity different from other religions? Now, before I go through that and start talking about it, I just wanted to say a few things about this. This is kind of funny because this thing right here, this is what I'm showing you, is probably the most shared thing I've ever done. It's not saying much for me, but we do have quite a few followers and we do have quite a few listeners to Theology Unplugged. But on Facebook, this thing just kind of blew up whenever I created it back in 2010. And it was just whenever I got an iPad 1, this new iPad, I got it and jobbled down some thoughts on what I was thinking about the difference between Christianity and other religions. And this all comes from the idea. Let me go through it first. I'm going to start and just walk you through it. Okay, now first here, as you can see, you have two sides. You have how other religions started and then how Christianity started. Over here, you have 4 boxes, and you have this man on a bed, if you can see it that way, having a private dream about God, or another guy having a private angelic encounter with God or about God, with an angel about God, or another one having just an idea. Maybe he's studying at a desk and he has this idea about God. They're all private. And then afterwards, this person, the one person that had the dream or the angelic encounter or the private idea about God, goes and tells everybody else what they saw. So keep that in your mind. Next, you go over to Christianity. What's the difference in Christianity from all other religions? Well, Christianity started in a public setting. It started from a public ministry of Christ, who had a public ministry and then was killed publicly. And then he was buried in a public tomb that we know about and we're told about. And he rose from the dead publicly. And then he goes and shows himself to the public. So he doesn't leave right immediately after he rises from the dead. He stays for 40 days on the earth, appearing to many different people. And then finally, who tells everybody about this? It's the public. It's everybody. It's not just one person. This is not just one idea about God or something like that. Anybody can make something up. What you have to start with is this idea of falsifiability. Whenever you're looking at something to see whether it is the truth and whether or not, if it's something significant, you want something that is falsifiable. I know that sounds weird, but whenever I wrote this originally, whenever I wrote the blog about this, it was called Christianity, the World's Most Falsifiable Religion. And that is very true. Christianity is absolutely the world's most falsifiable religion. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean necessarily that anything about it being false, just quite the opposite. You see, something has to be falsifiable in order to be believable whenever it is something significant or whenever it is a claim of significance. If it's not falsifiable, then there is no warrant for us to believe it. And so if you are making something up, think of it this way. If you're making something up, you usually don't tell people about details that can be checked, that you can do fact checking on. You usually keep it as private as you can about the places you went or the things you saw. You don't want, if you're making it up, you don't want other people to know, that you don't want them to check on it. If you're not making it up, it doesn't really matter because you're having a subjective dream. This doesn't make your idea about God, your angelic encounter that you think you had, or any other thing, your dream, doesn't make it false. It just means that there is no warrant for other people to believe it. You can believe it if you want, but there's no reason to. And whenever it's something of significance, you really want to have a reason to believe it. You don't want to base your life upon one person's dream. You don't want to base your life upon one person's thoughts and ideas. You don't want to base your life upon one person's experience even. You have that with Mormonism, with Joseph Smith and his receiving of the Book of Mormon. You have this with the Quran as well in Islam. Whenever you have Muhammad, who was taken up into heaven from the rock, taken up into heaven by himself, and got the Quran. Every other religion, whenever you have Hinduism, it's about somebody's ideas. So maybe some of them are good ideas. Maybe some ideas in Buddhism are good, but they're just ideas that don't have any further significance beyond that. If the ideas are true in these things, on many of them, they're just basically how to live type things in Buddhism and Hinduism. But when we're talking about claims of significance, objective claims like who created the world and does he love us and how do we get to heaven? How do we restore it? Do we have a relationship with him? What's the future like? Those types of things have to be grounded in something. Otherwise, we're just believing somebody's ideas and it's a flip of the coin. Maybe they're good ideas. But with Christianity, it is falsifiable. The Bible tells us whenever God makes his moves, or at least our Christian God, whenever he makes his moves, he does not do so in private. He makes big footprints. He comes down and he parts Red Seas. He comes down and he raises people from the dead. He does this in the public. He doesn't do it in the private. He does it in places and tells where the places are at. So whenever you're talking about the Bible, that's one of the things that you got to look at in the New Testament, is that it is a historic book. It is a book of history. It is a book of events within history about Christ. It is something that can be falsified. And not only that, but falsified in such an incredible manner because it tells about so many things. Who was the governor when Christ was born? Who was the governor whenever he died? Who were the leaders that sentenced Christ to death? Who were the apostles that followed him? Where did they go? What cities did they go to? What places within those cities? What happened? All of these things can be checked. Now, it doesn't mean we'll always find something from a historical or an archaeological standpoint, but many, many times we do, and indeed we do all the time. We're finding things that corroborate what the Bible says, what the New Testament says about Christ. And this is incredible because that is exactly what you would expect if God were to say, hey, I want you to base your entire life on what I am claiming, what is being claimed in this book. And if it's not falsifiable, who really cares? It's kind of like you have let's say my wife just called, right? And I can check on iPhone and see where she's at, because we've got that family thing where you go find your iPhone, and so I can check on a map, see where she's at, and go find her, and so on. If I asked her, hey, where are you at? And she tells me I'm at the gas station, on 122nd and Penn, I could check on my phone to see if she's there. It's falsifiable because she's on an iPhone. She's on an iPhone that's on my network, but I may check and it doesn't show up. And then I call her back and I say, hey, listen, where are you at? You said you were here, but I can't find you on the iPhone. She may say, well, my iPhone is turned off, or my what is it called? My location finder is turned off, or I'm on a burner phone. Let's put it that way. Well, I'm on a different kind of phone. I'm on a burner phone. Well, I can't falsify that. It's a burner phone. There's no connection to the network. There's no connection to any falsifiability. But whenever it comes to our iPhone, it's falsifiable because I can check. And just think of it that way. Think of all other religions kind of as burner phone religions, if you will. I don't know if that's a good way to look at it, but it seems like it right now. They're burner phone religions. They're religions that you cannot check. And so you're just going to have to either believe it or not believe it. But with Christianity, they are, I don't even like iPhone that much, but they are iPhone type. They are connected to the network. Let's put it that way. They are connected to the network so that you can falsify it. And that's just one little small example whenever I'm using this illustration of a phone. That's just one example of one aspect of the dozens, hundreds of aspects of the historicity of the Bible. I mean, it's just over and over again. It's just, it's not all burner phones. It's all, I mean, all the major events are based in history that you can check. They're connected to the network of the world. They're connected to the network of history, things we know, cities we know, places we know, people we know. So there's certain things you would expect to find. You don't make something up and give all of these historical details. If you're making something up, there's a few things you don't do. Normally, whenever somebody's making something up, they're not going to do anything that damages their character. They're not going to say, make up that they're the ones who lied, or they're, a criminal comes in and he's not going to confess that he's the one who stole this or that. Normally that won't happen. I'm not saying always, but normally people don't make up things that damage their character because they don't have any reason to. That's not part of humanity. Humans don't do that. We're prone to making stuff up, but not stuff up that damages our character, only that which enhances our character. Also, another thing you're not going to include incidental details. Whenever you're making up a lie, it's usually very clean, to the point, tells you exactly what, because you're making it up and you're wanting people to believe it. And so there's not a lot of incidental details, of course, that are going to go into a lie unless you're just like a really good liar and you know how to make stuff up, all these things around the event. You see this in movies and so on. Whenever you're watching a movie, you don't see incidental events. I've used this illustration before, but if you're watching a movie and, they're building the plot and the protagonist is let's say he's in a bar and he's hanging out and all of a sudden he pulls something out of his pocket. His camera zooms in on it and then it shows a coin fall out of his pocket. The camera follows this coin all the way down and, it rolls in. The camera zooms in on the date, 1942 quarter. And then it goes back to the regular scene. Well, what you would expect is sometime later on, that quarter, and possibly 1942, probably 1942, is zoomed in on it, to have something to do with the plot of the movie. Whenever you're making stuff up, whenever it's false, it has to be clean. It has to go along with the narrative. Could you imagine that happening in TV shows or movies where they're just showing all the incidental things that happen as the actors are acting things out? It wouldn't work. It doesn't help. It doesn't do anything. Nobody would watch it because you'd be confused the entire time. A movie keeps the plot clean and to the point. This is what I'm talking about. You don't make up things that are incidental details. You don't make up things that are going to damage your character. And let me tell you something, within those incidental details, you do not make up times or places. Because these things, not only are they not incidental details, these are the big details and they can be checked. If I'm making up a big story, if I decided to make up a religion, I wouldn't make one up and say, I live in Oklahoma. I wouldn't say in 2005 in Oklahoma, downtown Oklahoma, here's a significant event that happened. Let's say there was a massive car accident. It killed 30 people or something like that. Something big, something that would draw people's attention. And then if I'm making it up and I need to make it up, I'm not going to make it up and give the details of it because people can check. I could tell all kinds of things. It was off Broadway Street. It was by this building, and here's the people that came out. Here's the name of the police officer that was there at the time whenever this happened. all these things you don't make up, because people will just go and check. You can go and check. You can look in the newspaper. You can go downtown and talk to the police office. You can find out whether or not this really happened. It's real easy. And so you don't make up incidental details. If you're going to do something, what the significant event has to happen in a secluded place, probably one that nobody's even heard of, probably one that doesn't even exist, so that there's no way to check it out. When can't be a lot of people around, because then you have witnesses, and the witnesses will either say it did happen or it didn't happen. And if you're making it up, it didn't happen. So these people are going to be against your theory. They're going to be used against your theory. So that's why you have all of the religions, all other kind of big ideas. The only way they succeed is if they're done in a private setting, if they're kind of burner phone mentality. And so that is a major difference. You have to understand what this signifies and what this means for our faith. And as we move forward, not just for us as we're talking to our friends about our faith and trying to convince them of our faith, you yourself have to be able to grab a hold of this, the significance of this, and open your eyes toward what God is telling us. Because God is basically telling us this: I am a historic God, and whenever I make moves, I make them to where you have absolute warrant, obligation to believe what it is I'm telling you. I'm not just throwing things out there and hoping you believe. I'm putting it in places, times and places. I'm making a footprint so big you cannot deny that I made this footprint. God is a historic God. He is not a God of subjectivity. He's not a God that just comes to individuals. He's not a God that's just an idea that started sometime. He is a historic God, and whenever he does things through historic means. He does it in the public. He does it through people. He does it in ways that are networked, that can be tested. He never uses burner phones. The only time he'll ever use something to where you cannot test it is if he's already established himself in that area. So God has some big places in the Bible that you go to and you see where God has made this footprint. The two biggest footprints really in the Bible are the Exodus in the Old Testament. That's what they look back upon. That's why so much of the next 1,000 years you have all of the biblical writers telling people to look back upon the Exodus and see what God has done, and to prove that God is with us, or he is powerful. He is called the God who parted the river. He is called the God who led Israel across the Red Sea. And so you have a God who is identified with a historic event. Now we have the resurrection, and that's what we look back upon. We say the God who raised Jesus from the dead. It all changed in the New Testament. It was no longer the God who parted the Red Sea. It was still the God who parted the Red Sea, but this new event that was closer and even more falsifiable has been implanted. This is what we look back upon, and this is what Christianity is about. This is what you would expect, isn't it? This right here, well, let's see if I can get it back. No, I can't get it back. This is what you would expect if God is real, if he really wants you to believe in him, and if he really expects you to believe in him. It's just this has ramifications for everything, because basically what it's saying is that God wants to use your mind. He doesn't want you to be dumb. He doesn't want you to check out. He doesn't want you to, I'm not talking about using your mind in a super intellectual way as if you have to have a high IQ. I'm just saying think through things, to be able to think through whether or not these events happen. If Christ rose from the dead, if he lived on the earth for 30 plus years, 35, 38 years, and if he did all the events that it says he did in the Bible, and he interacted with all the people that it says he did in the Bible, and he went to all the places that it says he did in the Bible, then you would expect a tidal wave that this creates. A boulder has been dropped into the sea. How can you tell whether that boulder has been dropped in? I don't go to the place where the boulder was dropped in. I can't. The boulder's already sunk to the bottom, but I see the ripples from that. And you would expect that big events create big ripples. if these events happened, those ripples should be there. If the ripples are not there, we have no reason to believe it. And let me tell you, from Christianity's standpoint, those ripples are there. I mean, Christianity spread across the entire world. It converted the entire Western world in no time. I mean, it was the Western Empire's religion within 400 years, the official religion of the Western Empire, even though its followers at the beginning were getting persecuted and killed because they were countercultural to the polytheistic system of the Romans that they celebrated and loved. They loved their old way of doing things, but this truth came in. You have all of these people making claims. You try to shut them up. They won't shut up. You even have them killed for doing what they're saying, what they're saying. They still don't shut up. And then the world begins to get converted. Those are the ripple effects. And what I'm talking about here, whenever I'm talking about the early church and what happened, that's the networking we can do. That's the iPhone I can look at and see if this stuff really happened, because it's going to have ramifications. It's going to have a result. It's going to have waves that are produced in all directions. And so once again, this is and I tell people, if you're sitting here and you say, well, I don't know if I really believe in Christianity, here's what I do is I applaud you if you're doing that, because you're using your mind, because you may have gotten burned somehow and somebody told you, hey, you just have to have faith and you don't question things. You just believe blindly. That is not Christianity. It never has been. I understand that a lot of people do say that, but test what I'm saying here. To open the Bible and start reading the New Testament, start in Matthew, start reading through and see all the historic places, all the people, all the leaders, everything that is placed there, and say, would somebody make something like this up? Look at the incidental details. Look at the embarrassing things, the things that do not benefit the authors, such as all the apostles running and not believing Jesus and letting him die by himself. I mean, this is not something you do if you're making stuff up. The Bible contains all of the hallmarks of historicity. That is so important to realize. Now, you may say, well, yes, it does, but at the same time, people can't rise from the dead. Well, what you're doing is you're letting your assumptions determine history. History is our data. Your assumptions are not the data. If you start with those assumptions and you will not let go of that, if you're an anti-supernaturalist, if you're someone who doesn't believe in God, there's not one thing I can do. You're going to interpret the evidence through that grid. But let me tell you something, you're closed-minded. You are closed-minded. And I know you like to say other people are closed-minded because they're religious. That is not true. I don't have to believe in these things, but I am open to it. If you are open to it, you truly let the data lead to where you go. Whatever the data says, whatever the evidence says, that's what you follow. You don't follow your preconceptions. You don't follow your presuppositions. You do not even follow the worldview that you have. You let the worldview be created by the events of history. So this is something that I challenge all of you all to do, to look at the Bible, look at Christianity, look at the gospel of Christ, the whole message of Christ through this lens. Christianity is absolutely different than every other religion. It's not just another option out there. It is something that is completely falsifiable and calls upon you, beckons you. God is calling upon you, beckoning you to look at the evidence from a historical standpoint. Do everything you can. Put on your historicity hat. Put on your historiography. Learn how to do history. Learn how historians verify events of the past. Because what you will find is that the Bible itself meets every single criteria better than any ancient history book there is. There is no way you can compare anything in history to what the Bible says. You're going to have to either let go of all of history and just say, I'm going to be a hard skeptic, and there's no reason for that. That's just letting go of your mind. That's blind faith, being a hard skeptic. Or you're going to have to say the Bible. No, I'm not going to say that. You're just going to have to look at the evidence for yourself, because it's important for you to do that. It's important for you to discover on your own whether or not this is true. This is something that is compelling. It's something that that gives warrant. And I know it's scary looking at something saying I might be wrong or God might exist and there might be something he has to say to me, but I promise you, he loves you. He doesn't do this because he wants to cast you in hell or because he wants to punish you. He doesn't want to. He wants you to see Christ. He wants you to see the love of Christ, and he wants it so bad. He makes it a historical event that is so that the boulder that is so big that is dropped in the ocean, the ripple effects are going till today. I'm one of the ripple effects right now. Everybody you know that's a Christian is one of those ripple effects. Follow it back to the very beginning. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it came through okay, because last time it didn't. Make sure that you subscribe to wherever you are at, whether you're at Facebook or Spotify or iTunes or wherever this is coming through at. I pray you will subscribe to this, subscribe to us, start following us, and I pray that this is all beneficial to you. You can also, let's see here if I have it. Well, I don't right now. You can also become a patron. Patreon is how I get supported. You just go to patreon.com, and search C. Michael Patton. C. Michael Patton. That's just patreon.com/C. Michael Patton. Check that out. There's all kinds of gifts and benefits and videos that you get for free. So I hope you do that. If you believe in what I'm doing, you believe in my ministry, this is the most exciting thing in the world. It really is. I pray nothing else but that you truly believe it. Not because I want to be right, but because God loves you. He really does. And he's calling upon you to say, what does the evidence say? Falsifiability is so important, folks. It really is. And this is the most falsifiable religion in the world. Okay, thank you all. We're going to be coming back real soon. If you're still here, we're going to be coming back real soon with Conversations with Tad. So just stick around if you want to hear that. That'll come in 30 minutes.